There was an accuracy to what you just said that was funny, and then we got to hear it.
Oh, so you heard the last shot I took at you before?
Yeah, I did, and there was an accuracy to that, quite frankly.
Okay, I don't know if we should talk slow because NVIDIA is about to release their earnings. And do you have
that's like 9 people on the screen? Like they're all going to say anything, different from the
That's
other.
why I just have the stock up and how it's trading in the after hours. And that's how I'll know what the earnings were. I don't give a shit what these guys on air are going to say. But anyway, for you people who are joining us, welcome to Tradier, the Trader's Edge. I am Jim Iuorio. That's Bob Iaccino. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Bobby and I both were 25-year legacy media. In legacy media, we wanted to be part of platforms where we can say exactly what we think. And just we go over some really hard hitting stuff. Just before with the guest, we were debating what's the best way to give the finger. Because I sometimes do the 2 fingers next to it. I sometimes just do straight. Bobby, what's your best way?
Thumb's got to be out.
Thumb's got to be out.
It's hard to do.
Yeah. But anyway,
that is the M&M way.
Okay, so I still got nothing on NVIDIA. It's steady from where it closed the day.
No, nothing yet. And actually, we're bringing in a good person for this because I have my first question is going to be related to this, but I'll let you talk.
By the way, I don't know if you know this, but Friday of last week when the stock market tried to break out and failed, I switched to being a short-term bear for a 5 to 8% correction. Do you like that?
I do. I'm expecting a big correction. One of the things I don't think people have even quietly noticed is that we're if today ends lower, which the S&P is going kind of back and forth, that's going to be 5 consecutive sessions lower for the S&P and the NASDAQ. And it'll be 6 for the Russell.
Yeah.
So, I don't think there's any sort of panic at all. I just think we're in a situation where you're looking at stocks having been overdone. We're not getting a ton saying that they should go that much higher right now.
Yeah, we need something to change. Okay, so we'll get NVIDIA when they come out. But one thing I always say, by the way, is you guys know this. Most of you have been watching us for a long time. There's plenty of you probably think Bobby and I are full of shit and often wrong. But one thing you can't deny is that we get great guests. We have another one today, options strategist, options guru. He always gives a master class in strategy. Let's bring in Jay Soloff. Okay, so here's what's most important, Jay, and the mind of everybody. Okay, you're a huge Chiefs fan, which is great. I love it. I love that for you. I think it was the Atlantic that came out and said, inexplicably, the country has turned on the Chiefs. Okay, let me put my case out there and see if you think it's at least reasonable. I know you love the Chiefs, and that's fine. It would have been 3 straight Super Bowls. Every time you turn around and see a commercial, it's either Patrick Mahomes or either Kelsey, which both of them we associate with the Chiefs now, even though one was an Eagle. You get why some people didn't love them, right?
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
Good. And do you think there was any sort of, let's call it referee, how do we put it? Referee backing up until the final game, and be honest with us and yourself.
Well, so I grew up in Kansas City, so I've always had pretty intense hatred of the Yankees. But I never said to myself, I think honestly, that man, it would have been terrible to grow up in New York and be a Yankees fan or whatever. No, I mean, of course, like part of the hatred, there's obviously a little bit of envy there too, right? So,
I think that's right.
Yeah. So I never minded that, but I did get annoyed with the referee stuff, and the reason being is that if you looked at the actual statistics of penalties called versus the Chiefs versus anyone else, there was nothing to show that they were actually more penalized than a lot of other teams. I do think the league wants to protect Patrick Mahomes, but they've done that with all their star quarterbacks since the beginning of time, right? Or since not beginning of time. ever since that became a thing that they did, which was really Tom Brady, probably about since like 20 years ago, right? They don't want their marketable stars to get hurt. So, but I don't think that was just Mahomes. I think they would have done that, on any of their fate and, name players that bring in the revenue. So, but yeah, so I don't actually, I mean, sure, there were some bad calls. Saw a lot of the calls I saw that people complained about. This is pre-Super Bowl, like they were.
It was mostly Buffalo.
Yeah. I mean, the Buffalo, like people complain about the Buffalo stuff, but I mean, you look at I mean, Buffalo had all sorts of things that they could have done in that game, or things that they did not do to win. Right. And penalties, it's just it's it's like anything else. Or I like to think about blackjack, right? If you're not counting cards, people complain about players who don't play properly on the blackjack table. But if it's an endless shoe and you're not counting cards, a bad play can help you just as much as a good play. Now, if you're counting cards, sorry.
Yeah. But I get that at the blackjack table all the time. Like, come on. Yeah. Anyway, Bobby.
I want to say a couple of things. The Super Bowl was fair, and not because the Chiefs lost. It's not why I'm saying that. I didn't see anything. To your point about calls, there is evidence that Chiefs have gotten fewer calls in the playoffs, fewer penalties. There's actually data on that. Here's Rich breaking my balls again. He does this all the time. We love Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
So there is actually data. Now, we also can all agree that the Chiefs have the best coach in the league. Possibly, he's up there with the best coaches in history already. So it is possible, everybody who's anti-Chief, which I'm not. I am anti-Patrick, but there's other reasons for that, namely his wife.
I'm not a huge fan, of his wife.
She just watching that quarterback documentary, and she was driving me nuts. Anyway, it could also be possible that he prepares his teams better to not beat themselves in the playoffs. That is a possibility.
Mm-hmm,
I will say that there were two specific calls that Bills players were bitching and moaning, or Bills fans were bitching and moaning about, that I agreed with. And they were both in terms of the spotting of the ball. One that they were bitching and moaning about, they were completely wrong on. There was an offsides. There was one offsides call where the Bills player was clearly in the neutral zone before the ball was snapped, which resulted in a sack of Mahomes. On the very next play, he got like a 26-yard completion or something. That was offsides, to the point where I was like so annoyed, I had to send like minute by minute screenshots of the play to my Buffalo fan friend and say, look, the ball has not budged and his head is almost touching the offensive tackle already. So I think it could have gone either way. I will say this, though. For people who hate the Chiefs, this was the worst Chiefs team in a long time, and they lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That's Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. You guys are freaking good. And that's that.
And if you guys think we're wasting time before the NVIDIA earnings, it's mostly because we're wasting time before the NVIDIA earnings. But I did have one more point about quarterbacks. When you said protecting quarterbacks, I remember when Cam Newton never used to get the same consideration as Brady or Rodgers did. And people were like, they literally thought there was a racist element to it. I was like, crazy man, does it make any sense maybe that he's 6'5", 260 pounds, and refs almost feel sorry for the defenders because he's as big and fast as a linebacker? Maybe that's why he doesn't get he got insulted 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct, because there's been other black quarterbacks that have been protected by the refs too, namely Patrick Mahomes, correct?
Yeah, well, the running guys, I think the guys that run more don't get as many calls, right?
Yeah.
Because that they're play. I mean, I imagine Lamar Jackson doesn't get as many calls because
he's in the open field, right?
Yeah, I mean, he goes out there, runs, and takes hits. So, I don't know. I think the thing is that when the teams that are in the limelight a lot, I mean, they're scrutinized, right? To the they're on TV a lot. It's laser focused. People talk about them. You don't hear people talking about stuff going on in Jacksonville all that much, right?
Here, I'm going to give you your response from now on about Patrick Mahomes, because it's the same response Jimmy and I had for Michael Jordan. Yeah, he gets all the calls and it's fucking great. That's it. Because that happened with Jordan.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, by the way, Jordan didn't need all the calls, and neither does Patrick Mahomes.
Great.
But they do, because the league really wants their superstars to succeed. That's just common business sense. Anyone who doesn't agree with that, that's asinine. So, but anyway, so let's talk broad macro. NVIDIA will come when it comes. I don't know what the hell.
By the way, Salesforce getting crushed. Beyond Meat missed. They're doing nothing.
Yeah, because they sell a bullshit product. Anyway, go on.
Synopsys just came out, and they it was 303 adjusted EPS versus $3.56 year over year, and that's up 1.82%. And nobody cares about that because NVIDIA's do.
Today's NVIDIA. So do you think, okay, let's just start on that theme real quick. So are we in a situation where as NVIDIA goes, the entire market will follow? Has it gotten to a point, you agree that they are the single most important stock right now, Jay? And are they so important that they can send us in another, serious leg direction?
Yeah, I think in the sense that their earnings are so spread out compared to the other ones that, it's almost like I don't know what the right word is, but it's the I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. It's like the event. There's not much. You have the economic events coming out, but you have your few weeks of all your stock earnings coming out, and Apple and Facebook could be opposite, and then you won't see anything in the market, right? But
right.
NVIDIA,
I get exactly what you're saying. You can't when Apple comes out, you have Google and Amazon the next couple of days, so you can't, as a broad market trader, invest too much in that because the next punch could be coming. This happens way more in a vacuum because they distance itself. That's what you mean, and that's actually an extremely valid point. Bob.
Yeah. In a vacuum was the word I was looking for. Thank you.
I just think it's sort of like Bears Super Bowls. When they finally happen, there's just a whole lot of attention paid to it. But NVIDIA obviously is important to the market, especially the market cap weighted NASDAQ. So the financial news, which by the way is crap, you guys shouldn't be watching it. You should only be watching us.
Only.
What is it when the financial news says that options are pricing in 9% in either direction? We know the anchors don't understand how to get to that. You and I do. Jim does. Can you explain to people who don't understand how to find that themselves, what they should be looking at?
Yeah. In fact, someone, one of my longtime subscribers said, "Hey, I'm doing this Iron Condor and NVIDIA." And I'm like, "Ooh, that's, pretty ballsy on earnings day." But I'm like, but you did place your call and put spread outside the earnings straddle range. So I just talked about this, and it's about 9 or 10%. So all that really means is you're at the money strike, whatever the stock is priced at, which was, what is it? It's 130, 131 right now. So so let's say I'm assuming there's a 131 call and put, and I think it's by dollars. You add those two together, it gives you a price, and that's your expected range, right? So if it's $13, right? If you add the call, you have a $6.50 call, $6.50 put, that equals 13. That's roughly 10%, right? So the market is expecting a 10% move. That being said, right? It's a confidence interval, right? That's what I talk about my statistics class, right? It's a 95% confidence range, right? Which means that obviously some kind of weird result is going to, it's not going to necessarily follow that. It's an estimate, right? It's by no means
right.
You can't say, it's definitely going to fall in that range, because if they come out with surprising news, that's not built into the price. The price is built into history and everything else. The other thing about that is that $13, it could, if you go up 2, down 5, up 7, whatever, that is also $13, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to go in one direction. So that's another thing that can be a little bit more confusing about those straddle
off the top of your head what the average, and if the answer is no, it's fine, because this is a pretty nuanced question, what the average move is in NVIDIA over the last 4 or 5 earnings cycles, what their move has been? Bobby, do you know that? Or Jay, do you know that?
I don't, but NVIDIA just came out and the stock is up about 0.5% right now. I'm waiting to see the actual numbers. I'm just seeing the movement in the stock. Oh no, I'm sorry, they're not out yet. They're
not out yet. Okay, good. I'm like, well, then I'm getting a bad feed
in the aftermarket.
Okay.
8%, Jim, is what I'm seeing for that.
Is an average move. So we're baking in a little bit bigger
Mhm.
move now, which is interesting. And that must have to do with the punch it took from DeepSeek, which was probably about 2-3 weeks ago. And
Mhm.
maybe it exposed some vulnerability. Bobby, you think?
Yeah, I do. I think that's part of the nervousness around it, right? And by the way, I think that DeepSeek thing is horseshit. I don't think it's going to affect NVIDIA over the
Or
long
a
term
technical term,
at
people.
all.
There's iron
Technical term.
condors and there's horseshit. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
NVIDIA got kicked in the nards and it stood up. It's like anybody would after they get kicked in the nards. And by the way, when we come out with merchandise someday, that's going to be the first thing we come out with is a kicked in the nards shirt.
Yeah, we're trying to bring back nards, Jay. That's where we're making a big effort.
Yeah.
My daughter says at my funeral, she will give her eulogy and say he made a real effort, not commercially successful, but he brought back nards.
Yeah, but I that Bob has that says, "Hello, I'm a nard." You know, if you can create that, I'm in. So, you know,
I think we got it. I think we got it. Yeah, so I definitely think it's that. Like NVIDIA is one of those stocks right now. It's going to fade in my view, similar to the way that, you know, the entire Mag 7 slowly faded. You're not going to be looking at NVIDIA as the bellwether for the stock market. I don't believe for too much longer, if I'm being completely honest.
Jay, do you agree with that?
Go ahead, Jay.
You know, to some extent, the as someone, you know, I've embraced AI quite a bit, right? Like I'm someone that I'm not really a programmer. I've taken some classes in coding, but I'm sitting here asking whatever Chat GPT how to write code in Python and, you know, whatever, and coming up with reasonably decent programs. Like I'm so impressed. And so I'm definitely a believer. And obviously NVIDIA is probably the most famous stock in that area. You're seeing some pushback on the whole data center thing. That was the DeepSeek, you know, which remains to be seen. And that's a big business. But, you know, now you have the quantum computing stuff. If you saw the Microsoft Majorana, whatever that's called, you know, with their new state of matter, that's, you know, this stuff might come out in the next couple of years instead of the next decade. I guarantee you NVIDIA is going to be in that mix as well. So, I don't want to bet against it, but I would rather say if I'm going to pick a long-term stock, I'm probably in Microsoft, right? Like that's probably my favorite of those big names in the tech area. They're in more stuff.
Microsoft an AI play, a quantum computing play, or all the above just based on their scale?
Yeah, like everything, right? I mean, gaming and, you know, they still have their whole operating system business, which nobody even talks about anymore, right? I mean, it's that they are, I think, more diversified than pretty much anybody out there. And, you know, and because the quantum computing thing was, if half the stuff they say is going to be possible based on what they say, then I mean, there's no limit, right? I don't know. Who knows, right? I mean, I don't know if planes are going to be able to heal their own cracks or whatever. I mean, that's one example they gave. I mean, it seems kind of far-fetched, but some of the things that they talked about as potential uses of it are like, you know, sci-fi level stuff.
Yeah.
So I got an interesting sort of not a take on this, but I'm stealing some of this from Jeffrey Tucker. We all know Jeffrey Tucker, right? From Brownstone. He's been on our show a couple of times, and he wrote a piece today talking about how AI is eliminating search, right? So you have companies like Google who you can at least sort of admit that they've kind of lost trust, right? Especially over the course of the last, like, let's call it 3 elections, where it seemed like, you know, they may have been biased in their results and things like that. And ChatGPT is getting that same sort of a reputation, right? I myself have found, not in politics, but I found ChatGPT to be wrong multiple times. And I actually kind of enjoy arguing with the AI and getting it to apologize, which I have my first apology from ChatGPT framed. Anyway, so from that perspective, like Jeffrey was talking about how he barely uses search anymore. And from a perspective of that, what do you guys both think about that kind of thing, where you're seeing situations where companies are getting replaced a lot more quickly than they used to? For example, it took Facebook a long time to replace MySpace, right? And this is part of my thesis for NVIDIA. I'm not smart enough to know what's going to replace it. But I do think that's why I don't necessarily like look at NVIDIA as it is the bellwether right now, but it may not be in a very short period of time. And maybe quantum computing is a reason. I don't know. So what do you guys think about that sort of thesis?
Jay?
Yeah, and I definitely agree with search, right? Like I pretty much don't Google anything anymore. I go right to, I try different stuff just to see if the, ChatGPT, Claude, I've messed with the DeepSeek a little bit. 100% agree that, yeah,
NVIDIA's out. Don't mean to interrupt you. NVIDIA's out.
Yep.
The first, well, at least it just dropped 2%. So I assume it's out. I did not mean to interrupt you. Keep going.
No.
Yeah. Oh, now it's up. Now it's up 2%.
It must be out because it's moving around. Yeah.
You finished though, Jay. Sorry, just meant to tell you.
No worries. No worries. Yeah. It's kind of hard to say. I feel like a little bit like, cause I was on the floor in 99 and 2000 and 98, when, it was like, is JDS Uniphase going to be the next big, and some of the, and some of these names and, and some of them were, Yahoo did have staying power for quite a while. It's still out there, right? It's not obviously not what it was, but, AOL was, was one of the first equity pits that our firm went into. It was great for a long time, right? So
I have Bobby, while you getting these NVIDIA numbers together, I have one more point to make to Jay, and I want him to. I don't know if he knows how tinfoil hat crazy conspiracy theory I am, but you're about to, Jay, and it might be a little scary to you. One of the reasons I own Google stock and have for several years, Bobby, you know why, right? Because I believe that Google is the CIA. The CIA is Google. That's what I've believed for a long, long time. You can giggle, but let's just say this. Let's say that you and I ran the CIA. We were the descendants of Wild Bill Donovan, and this is 15 years ago. Our literal job is to collect intelligence on people. You think we'd just sit in our office and let some other company do it 10 times better than we did without tapping into it? That is a reasonable thesis, is it not? Or am I crazy, Jay?
I wouldn't doubt that there's some kind of arrangements between these companies. Did Google did the government fund Google to be its spying arm?
It was a Department of Defense loan, just to be clear. A lot of people don't realize it was a DARPA loan. Go on. Yeah.
But I've watched too many spy conspiracy movies to, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it would not surprise me if, Google has got some kind of backdoor that the CIA can, in the name of national defense or something like that.
Sure.
That would not shock me. Right.
Real quick, guys.
Yeah. Go on, Bobby.
Revenue 39.3 billion versus an estimate of 38.04 billion. That's obviously a beat. EPS 89, estimate was for 85.5 cents. That's obviously a beat. As I'm looking at it right now, NVIDIA went from up 3%. Right now, it's down 3.4%.
Oh, keep watching. I think I'm getting a quicker feed, and now we're back up 1%.
Yeah.
So the market is saying they don't have any idea how to interpret this.
No.
Correct?
And, even this is one of those things, this is something we talk about a lot on here, Jay, and we talked about it a lot. I've talked about it a lot in the past, even when I was sort of quote unquote teaching traders things, is what happens, what the news is. Absolutely means nothing. It's what the news is versus what the market was expecting the news to be.
And positioned for.
Yeah, positioned for. So I think that people were hoping for and expecting quite a very big beat, not just a beat. But also there's going to be this sector of the market who is like, okay, if we get a little bit of dip in this, we get a beat here, we're going to buy it. So we'll see who wins out. I really when I do my charting, I don't pay attention to pre or post market at all. I don't.
It's noise.
Yeah, people will write to me and be like, hey, our stock is down 5 or up 5. I'm like, don't pay attention. What happens in the morning is what we need to pay. Exactly. But last time, last earnings, there was a 9% predicted move in NVIDIA. It moved that day 0.5%. It was nothing. Selling a straddle would have made you a fortune, right? Yeah. So it's done.
That's usually the case. Not always.
Yes,
oftentimes that's the case.
Well, that brings me to my next question then too. So, okay, the options trading has absolutely exploded over the last couple of years. And much of it is in the 0 days, which I still cannot figure out the implications for the broader market with the explosion in 0 days to expiration. But let's just say, just in general, with the use of option, is that distorting the volatility signals that you used to get, or is it making them better? Is it making them worse? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's just different. And first of all, that's a great question, because I don't think anybody truly knows the answer yet. Right. So, and it's definitely a topic of discussion. The thing is that you look at stuff like VIX, right? Your most popular volatility indicator, it's still a 30-day indicator, right? And a lot of your 0 DTE stuff really won't even necessarily make a difference in that, right? I mean,
right.
It's gonna, if you have a big new move one day to the next, it's not really gonna show up, right? You're gonna need a series of big moves in order for that to. So in some sense, like 30-day measures are still important. I think there might be some interesting signaling from very short-term stuff, particularly if you're seeing patterns. The research is still coming out on that, but there's some interesting things like, hey, you beat volatility. You're doing better than your straddle, right? So in other words, you're moving more than what the market's expecting 3 days in a row. Well, 97% of the time, the fourth day is not, right? Or so, I mean, there's some interesting studies like that going around, which that stuff is really hard because it doesn't, right? So, but it's interesting.
So here's a follow-up question then, Jay. Let's say, and I've gone through this before too. Let's say you have someone coming to you who's a beginner using options, but they desperately want to learn how to use options. And a class is one thing, but actually doing it is a lot different. Mm-hmm. What I tell them to do is, okay, let's just get your system up right now. Let's buy a call spread for 2 weeks or put spread based on whatever your market opinion is. And I want you to just look at it every day and try to study how it fills out, how you make money, how you lose money on this. But it's a very, very defined risk trade. Mm-hmm. What do you do when someone comes in and says, I want to learn how to use options. I want to use options to enhance my returns?
Yeah. And it's funny because I get a fair amount of pushback from more, institutional type people on this in Twitter, but I'm still a big covered call fan, right? Like I think it's very hard to beat the fact that you're getting the equity risk premium by owning the stock, and you're taking advantage of the volatility risk premium by selling a call, right? Now that assumes you're selling a call in what you expect are overpriced options, but it's obviously there's a lot of components to that, but you're getting 2 premia out there for the price of 1. And it's, again, like I try to tell people, should you do a cover call in NVIDIA before earnings? Probably not, right? But proper use of, the proper timing of, picking the right stocks and the right, this also goes pretty much for selling puts. Like start with low price stocks and cash secured puts because you don't need a lot of capital, and maybe they're not the best choices, but you can get a taste for how things move with very limited risk. A $10 stock, that's not likely to go to zero. What's your downside risk? Like I like that stuff because people can do it without feeling too nervous. And, that sort of thing, I think, and same thing as what you said, doing spreads, because you have defined risk. The only issue that I've ever had with spreads is that some people have trouble. They don't know what to say to get approved to trade spreads, right? Where they never have issues getting covered call or and I'm not a registered advisor, right? So I don't really want to tell people this is what you need to say to your broker to do it right. So, it's I have to kind of wait for people to get up to speed and be able to trade more complicated stuff with defined risks. But cover calls, cash secure puts, very easy to start with, very easy for your broker to allow you to do.
Let's run the banner, Luis, and then Bobby, you got the next question. The banner is for a special offer the Tradier is giving, by the way, which will be 3 months free Tradier Pro. I believe Jay was the guest who trades options every day and said he uses Tradier Pro. Is that correct, Jay? Anyway, you will not be disappointed with the system. If you are considering being an options trader or you trade a ton of options, Tradier Pro is really the tip of the spear for technology regarding this. If you go now, you get a 3-month free trial. You have absolutely no obligation. Please, if you want to support this show, please punch it and sign up. Anyway, Bobby.
Yeah, so I want to actually We got Sterling here saying hello. Sterling is a regular watcher of Mike's live shows. He actually is a moderator in Mike's live presentations. So
Mike Singleton?
Mike Arnold.
Oh, Mike Arnold. Sorry about that. Arnold,
So
great.
Sterling knows. He also, if anyone's looking in the sort of Carolinas area and you're looking for I believe it's Toyota, Sterling's got to talk to.
All right. I remember Sterling. Yeah, he does sell
Yeah, he
Toyota.
works,
Right.
works in the finance area. So I actually have a chart of NVIDIA up here, and I'm putting it up for a very specific reason. As I'm looking at it in the aftermarket, I'm seeing down 0.2%. It's seeming like, at least right now, that selling that straddle is probably the right idea, right? At least right now. We don't know how it's going to play out. What would have been the approximate expiration on that straddle? I don't really know at this point. Having said that, so this green line you're seeing is a 200-day moving average. This is a daily chart, okay? And then you're seeing a bunch of other moving averages that I've got on there that are basically shorter term stuff. Brent from Deer Point Macro is here too now. Wait, it's not Brent. I get him confused with Santiago all the time. But
no, we love Deer Point Macro, and why can't I remember his name either? He's a good guy and a great guest. Sorry, we can't remember his name.
Yeah, we got to get him on this show as well. Anyway,
Yeah.
So one of the things I like about this particular, I'll just play around with this chart for a quick second. I'm not looking at any sort of a trade because, again, tomorrow is when I would be looking at this. But essentially with NVIDIA, we've got a breakout of some sort coming, right? And if we don't get a sustained move higher in NVIDIA through those moving averages, which is not significant resistance right now, they're all flat. And when they're flat like this, I just don't pay much attention to them. And we're going to get a break of the 200. And if that break sustains and holds, this could be the trigger of something, not just for NVIDIA, but for the NASDAQ. But the funny thing about people focusing on stocks like this, Jay, I want to get your comment on this. Focusing on one stock, like a lot of people do, which I try to get people to sort of spread out a little bit. CRM, to me, I've actually got a potential sell in there, right? Now, again, these charts do not have the intraday, and Salesforce started selling off after their earnings. What we've got here is a target of this 200 on CRM, and it seems to me like, well, I don't see CRM's live stock price right now, Jimmy, or if one of you guys can look that up. Yeah. I'm guessing if this weakness in CRM sustains, it's going to open up below the 200. And if that's the case, 200's at about 280, 259. Again, I don't know where it's trading right now.
Right now, it's trading at 291.77, down 5%. After earnings were just now right before NVIDIA, right? You said that before.
Yeah.
By the way, CRM is Salesforce for people who don't trade it every day.
Salesforce.
Yeah.
So we've got two major stocks, but the entire world is focused on NVIDIA. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at X, and there's like 3 or 4 NVIDIA earnings live streams going on, including Yahoo Finance and Reuters, right? So I'm looking at this. By the way, we've got more viewers right now than Reuters does. But anyway, I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing like CRM is a much better setup to either exit longs, sell covered calls if you get a rally in it. So, again, we got to watch tomorrow. None of this really matters. Jay, do you ever have people that are like reaching out to you and saying, NVIDIA is coming out, what should I do? NVIDIA is coming out, what should I do? KG is saying I've got a bid ask in the upper left-hand side, but I don't include on these charts the overnight sessions, KG. So I'm not really seeing a live bid ask in here on either one of these.
No, I think you are, Bob. I think he's right.
We're at
291. Yeah, that's where the market is right now.
We're in the upper what? Up here?
Yeah, I think he's right. No, right there. See the bid ask?
Honestly,
bid is higher than the ask.
Yeah, so that actually may be live, but the bid's higher than the ask. So I'm not looking.
Oh, no, because I think that's where you can buy it and that's where you can sell it.
That's where you can sell it, right? 291 at 292.10.
Yeah, thanks for who was the listener who just told us that. I think that is live.
Up here. Yeah, it's KG. Thank you, KG. But I still am not going to pay attention to it because it's after hours. And I just don't. So thanks, KG. I appreciate it.
Very much so.
Yeah. So anyway, Jay, do you ever have people to look at it and say NVIDIA's out, and you're like, yeah, but whatever, there's other stuff moving?
Yeah, I've gotten into, so of course I'm an options guy, obviously, and that's pretty much all I do. So I try to look at everything in terms of options, but I've gotten into some metrics that I've been reading about, in particular one called the Hurst exponent. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But it's a pretty cool, something that was originally based on like water flow or something with water. And it's the whole like fractal hypothesis. And it's pretty good in terms of history, like white paper research on showing trend versus mean reversion. And so I've been messing around with that for the last couple months. And then I like it in terms of, I like finding stuff that is, in trending or mean reversion state where I can sell a call spread or put spread in the opposite direction, right? Particularly put spreads. Call spread's a little tougher, like determining between trend and mean reversion is a little harder on the upside, but it works, I think, really well in terms of finding something that is near the bottom of the range and looks like it's going to mean revert. I really like selling put spreads down there, right? Because you have to define risk, and you have typically extra volatility because put values go up as stock goes down. And then, so I like doing that. And if there's an opportunity to suggest something like that, then I will look. If someone says, hey, what should I do with NVIDIA? Well, it's at the bottom of the range after earnings. I think this might be a good time to sell put spread, something like that. Right. I mean, that's kind of the extent. I'm basically looking for, overpriced options that kind of fit the setup that, I'm more of a seller. So I'm definitely more of a volatility seller. So trying to find the right setup and the overpriced options and things like that. If it doesn't fit it, then I usually don't have an opinion, right? Like, I'm like, it's not really my thing. So, but I would look at this one instead.
Jay, is the reason that the call spreads are harder because it's sort of the natural upward bias of equity markets?
I think so. I think, the research has like, let's say you're looking at like a 2 standard deviation range from like the 50-day moving average. I think, you have, I don't know if it's 50-50, but the research is when you go up to about 2 standard deviations, like, it could be trending, it could be mean reversion, right? It's not as cut and dry on the bottom. It tends to be, well, yeah. I mean, again, I like what you said. People like to buy the dip, right? I mean, there's constantly money flowing in from whatever 401ks or, people have money flowing in, right? And they want to buy stuff, even during more tumultuous times, and they'd like to find things that have sold off, particularly former high flyers, right? So I think that's why it works well. I think it's the sentiment thing, right? And so it's definitely harder on the upside. Yeah.
Bobby and Jay, a question. So we saw Salesforce, they just put out their numbers and they got pummeled. Okay, so let's say are you going back to Salesforce chart?
I could, sure.
Yeah. So let's say you're someone who, believes the bull run in stocks is still.
This is a weekly, by the way, Jimmy, just so you know.
Still relatively healthy. So now it's traded down to it's at 292 right now. And it is, it definitely is running into some, no, it's already below those levels. I was going to say, do you sell a put spread on something like this because of the exaggerated move that it's had? Do you find that if you did that somewhat religiously on big earnings day moves, would that be a winning strategy, Jay? Do you know?
It's been my experience, at least like I generally do cheaper. I generally like stick to cheaper level stuff just because of capital requirements. Again, I don't assume people have margin accounts or have spread trading capability. So I try to stick to cheaper stuff, but at least with that stuff, in my experience, selling at the bottom of like a 2 standard deviation range, you put spreads on earnings, depending on setup, right? So if it's come up and it's at the top of the 2 standard deviation range, if it misses, it's not just going to mean revert sometimes because how people pile on, right? Sure. So sometimes it'll go from like up 2 standard deviations to down 2 standard deviations. That's why I worry about that. But very rarely do you see something miss that's already down 2 standard deviations and then keep going down, right? Because at that point, it's generally built in. So, it's a big probability, right? There was a reason why, like, I decided when someone at the college asked me, do you want to teach statistics? Oh, yes, I love probability, right? That's my life, right? I'm all about trading probabilities in my favors. Now, of course, it's not always going to work because you can't plan for everything, But a lot of times when, sentiment is already kind of, it's built in and this is built in, the options overpriced, and you kind of add all these things together, I would say, I don't know, my success rate's probably something like 80%. I don't have stats, but I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with it. The problem is you got to watch, the losers can destroy all your winners, right? If that's where the put spreads and stuff come in, right? You want your defined risk. Otherwise, it's very easy to give up all your gains when you have one kind of, gray swan type event, right? That you don't expect.
So I just want to point out on the CRM chart before I put up Tim's question and Tim's chart request. On a weekly basis, CRM actually closed below this double top trigger. Now, for technical geeks, Mike Arnold and I did research on this, which basically means Mike Arnold did research on it. That this particular pattern fits all the markers of a high probability double bottom, which means it has well above 60% probability of getting to 273.83, which is right here. You guys can see what I'm pointing to, right? Mm-hmm. Should I zoom in, Jimmy, or is this good?
No, I can see it. Yeah.
All right.
And I'm old with old man eyes. Yeah.
And then once it reaches this, if it gets below it, it's got a very high probability, again, upwards of like 65% of reaching 260.51. So when I see something like this, and granted, this is a weekly chart, so there's time for this to happen. I would like to go out a little bit further along the options curve and find something to do. So if I give you those kind of probabilities, Jay, what jumps out at you? These are not recommendations, people, but what jumps out at you if I show you that I have a well above 60% probability on a weekly chart that we're going to drop from where we are now by almost $30?
I mean, that's
not a recommendation. Just what jumps in your head. What would you be exploring?
That's a tough one, right? Because, well, I'd have to look at the option pricing after earnings.
Of course.
Maybe there's a sale. Maybe this is a good time to maybe do some hedging instead, right? Or buying a put spread, because I'm not generally a buyer here, but if you think if you get the implied volatility crush, which generally happens after earnings, right? Like the news is out, the prices start to level out a bit, then sometimes you can find some pretty attractive purchase opportunities. And again, with a put spread, since this is an expensive stock, right? If you buy a naked put, it's probably going to cost a fortune, even with low volatility, just because of the nature of option pricing. But if you buy, so where are we at? 292. I mean, maybe you want to. It depends if you want to be more aggressive or you want to be more protective. But you're saying $30. Maybe you buy like a 270, 260 put spread or something like that.
Yeah.
Who knows? Without seeing how option prices open, hard to say, but maybe that's a $4 trade, right? And you can make $6 or something.
I have an answer to this, Bobby, too. I like to do imbalanced put flies on occasion, like more directional, with a more directional slant. So I would look at that. And if I'm talking to Mike and Bobby, and again, I make no recommendations at all, particularly about individual stocks. So let's just say this is, it's pork bellies or cricket flour. I don't give a shit what it is. I would look at perhaps like let's call it a 280, 265, 255 put fly, 15 by 10. So the reason I would do that is because, like Jay said, it's going to be expensive. It's expensive stock. Vol's probably popped a little bit too. So I'm buying a put spread and selling a put spread. But the put spread I'm buying is going to be a wider put spread than the put spread I'm selling. I sell that put spread to cheapen it up a little bit. One thing I hate about doing a fly is if I'm right in the direction and it blows through everything, it's the same as being wrong, right? So, but if it doesn't, in this one, I will still have an intrinsic of, I think I said $5. I was just doing that off the top of my head. I hope you guys get the notion of what I'm saying. Jay, you like that kind of trade?
Broken wing butterflies, directional broken wing butterflies. That's one of my favorite ways to trade. I absolutely love that trade. Again, we'd have to look at the strikes and mess with the pricing, but assuming I think what you're saying is very close to what when you started talking about it, that was immediately what kind of popped into my head. So, maybe we're both crazy, but
yeah. Well, remember, I said I thought that Google was the CIA, so I'm crazier, Bobby.
I'm going to put this chart is Tim's recommendation. Luis, if you can put the comment up, or his question rather, any thoughts on C3 AI? Full disclosure, I own April 25 and $20 puts. I'll just
No, April of 25, $20 puts is what he.
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
April 25, $20 puts. Thank you. I read that wrong. So I will tell you that right now, I love these. I think you might take a little bit of heat and then that heat may fail. Just looking at this chart on a daily basis, let me look on a weekly. On a weekly, yeah, it's completely broken down. It's about as ugly as charts get. Not sure, Timmy, when you bought those, but I'm assuming that there's going to be a little bit of decay before they work for you, because what typically happens on charts like this is you get a move back up into this area and then it either fails or reverses. Now, you can say that about any fucking chart. They all either fail or reverse, right? But this particular one has quite a bit of resistance that matters, not just this gap lower that then closed almost higher and rallied from there, not just this spike high here, which coincides with that level, but we're forming a rotation zone lower, which means that price can go up into this rotation. And then when it fails, it gets an extra push below this low. So I like the trade. It's just a matter of how much the time decay hurts you guys.
Jay, I got something on this. Can I go first real quick?
Please.
Because Jay, when I see a move like Tim, and good to see it. Good to see your name again, Tim, by the way. If you've had these on and you have some money in these puts, you've had them on for a couple of days, I would look at this now and maybe sell the 15 put against it. There's a couple reasons. One, you don't want to get this big move lower and and have everything taken off the table from you in the next week. And two, once we start getting into that lower numbers, then the market has to look at this name and decide, is it going out of business or not? So below 15, it starts to get a little stickier on the downside too, unless there's, and again, we've seen stocks go to zero as well too, but that's the way I would kind of look at that, to change that put into a put spread. Jay, what do you think of that?
You know, I have a soft spot for this stock because I've been trading it for
here we go. I love this.
So I've been using this one for cover calls, and it's been very good. Well, more of if I like the term wheel strategy, where sell puts, and then if you get assigned, sell calls, and it's done really well for me and for my subscribers. Obviously it's dropped lately, but I feel like this company might have gotten hit a bit too hard because of DeepSeek, which really the danger there is more, in my opinion, to the data centers, right? If it's going to be that much cheaper to program AI, to teach AI, then you don't need all the data centers, that sort of thing, right? I don't think that's much. I don't think AI is really in that area as much, right? So I feel like it might be a bit overdone. Not saying, the 20 puts could work out just fine, but I'm more of I'm more of an option seller around this name. I'm not necessarily bullish, but I'm more neutral, right? I really like the idea of maybe buying this and selling calls against it, or selling puts beneath it short term, very short.
No, I got the solution to both of us. Yeah. What about selling 2 of the 15 puts?
There he goes.
There you go. All right.
Bobby, is 15 a good level there or no? Like,
yeah, it is, because like if I shrink this chart up, okay, you're going to see that the breakout initially was around 15.
I wonder if you go back in time. But they're April, so for their April, so yeah.
So this breakout down here really took off around 15, and then you can see like how many times this level in this sort of 1920 area held. And I mean, we're going back in time, so I could even look at better at the weekly, where got to move this out a little bit. Okay, you're seeing essentially the cycle low for this particular stock was 10, and then we broke out, came down, tested 17, came up, tested 24, tested 21 here, tested 19 here. 15 is a good solid support level, like long term.
Yeah,
and you could buy the 10 and turn it into a butterfly if you need to cover your margin, because it probably won't cost that much.
Now they're just going to have to go to your newsletter. Jay.
Yeah.
Because it's getting to be too
After
much.
that, you're gonna have to pay for more stuff too. Which, by the way, everyone who is viewing right now, like I loved the notion that we were breaking news on NVIDIA. It reminded me of my days with legacy media, and that part of the job was fun when we were actually breaking news. I personally think we did about 10 times better job breaking news than any of those morons at the TMZ of financial stations who will all say something stupid. Because we can swear, we can say holy shit. Just put in a quick comment. Let us know, yes or no, should we be breaking news live on this show going forward? And I know there's about 3,000 people watching. I would love 3,000 responses, you people. Thank you very much. Bobby?
Yeah.
Yeah, real
Rob and I
quick.
can
another
dress up
piece
for this too, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely this is the way you want to dress for this. I'd like to see you in black, but you know, you got a little bit lighter skin. I definitely want to do some more breaking news. Byron Donalds announces he's running for Florida governor. So,
What do you think about that? I'm in Florida right now. What do you think about that?
Well, I really thought, by the way, Tim says yes on breaking news. He's the first one to comment. So we got that going for us. Timmy's a good friend down here. He doesn't live too far from me.
Good man.
He's also a very successful long-term investor. So anyway, Byron Donalds, I don't necessarily like losing people in Congress like that have that sort of an attitude around things. But I mean, as a successor to Ron DeSantis, and this is not a political statement, I just like the way this state is run. I like the current conversation of removing property taxes almost altogether. DeSantis seems to be focused on at least preventing them from rising based on appraisals.
Bobby, can I ask a quick question on this though?
Yeah.
Was Ron DeSantis, did he announce he's retiring? Why is
he can't run? No, he can't run again unless he could pause on a term. Actually, he's the one who signed this bill into law. He has to exit after 2 terms. Then he can run again. He's the one who broke that.
I didn't know that. And I was so confused on the headline of Byron Donald. Jay, did you know that, or am I an idiot?
No, I was going to ask the exact same question. Or maybe he's planning for a presidential run.
Sure.
Yeah.
I believe it was Charlie Crist, and Tim might know this, but I believe it was Charlie Crist that signed the governor term limits to 2. And then DeSantis is actually one who signed that after 1 term out, you can run again. But again, you know, Widge just said, Luis, can you put this up? Widge is a regular viewer of ours, Jay, and he's widely respected in this particular show and on all our shows, really. He always puts up really, really good content. Widge said, would love to see Byron Donalds on the show. I've actually got, and if anyone who knows Byron Donalds is watching this, I have his cell phone number. I'm not going to say where I got it. And I'm actually in his district. And I've reached out through that cell phone number multiple times. I probably got blocked as some sort of crazy person. But I would love to have Byron Donalds on.
There is a way we can get these people. We've done it before too. Like if these people don't know us, if it requires all you people watching help, we'll go on Twitter. We'll put it out. We'd like to see them on the show. And if 500 people retweet it and comment on it, the person will take notice. We've seen this happen before. That was how early on we got some of our big name guests. Now, of course, they're all crawling over each other to come on the show because it's wildly successful. And we're the best interviewers in the game because we don't give a shit about any of the normal rules, right?
Yes.
But if you get those guys, it's really going to diminish my star power, right? Like I can't compete with Byron Daniels or,
No, but here's the thing. This is a Tradier sponsored show. And to our surprise, last time you were on our Tradier sponsored show, you declared how, wow, I didn't know this was Tradier. I actually used that software. Yeah. So that's to those of you guys that are looking for a new sort of platform to take a look at. Tradier is the one to look at, and Jay can vouch for that.
Yes.
Okay. Are we done here, boys?
Yeah, I think we are. Tim just said Byron is a former banker. I may be able to help. Timmy, if you can help, we'll put you on the show with him. How's that?
Yeah. Well, Widge, by the way, the fact that he stays anonymous, which Widge is an extremely bright guy.
Yeah.
Tim, I thought you were talking about Widge. Because Widge, I just make the assumption that he doesn't want to come on and talk in front of a camera because he's been anonymous. Like, Doomberg, it took a while to get him to come on, and then he did something to distort his voice, whatever. But anyway, so I want to thank you guys all for watching us. The place you come for breaking news is
at least on Wednesday.
Tradier's the Trader's Edge, because that's what we do. When news breaks, we fix it. So I'm Jim Iuorio. That's Bob Iaccino. Jay, tell them where they can find you.
Check me out, investorsalley.com, netpicks.com, enroll in classes at Park University. I might teach you something about statistics,
Yeah. What do you, are the students like really into it? Do you like it? Is it cool?
I love it. It's the campus here I'm in Gilbert, Arizona, is pretty much all student athletes. Their main campus is just coincidentally in Kansas City, where I'm from, but that was a total coincidence. They happen to have one other live campus in Gilbert, and it's mostly student athletes. And I really like, most of them are not interested at all in statistics. So it's quite in business analytics and those two classes that I teach. And I really enjoy finding ways to get them interested. It's a nice challenge that is, also I think helpful in their careers, hopefully. So most of them aren't going to end up being pro athletes. Right. So it's, feel like
I'm just going to throw this out there now. I'm actually working sort of loosely one-on-one with an actual, like a real celebrity that I'll tell you guys off the air who it is. And then I told him that I was going to send him to a couple of option specialists after we were done with the basics. So you're both on that list.
Cool. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. Thanks for all the support you're giving us, the DMs, the retweets. It is humbling and amazing to us on both our shows that we have had such positive feedback, and we are eternally grateful for that. This is Tradiers, the Trader's Edge. I'm Jim Iuorio. That's Bob Iaccino. That is Jay Soloff. And Tim has one last comment. Let's read it as it comes up, because we love Tim McLean. I know you fly below the radar. I fly above the radar. I'm right on the radar. See you guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
You know how the financial world goes. Here comes the buzzkill. Please make sure to take some time to read this boring disclaimer. We will owe you one.